Hello everybody, I'm Disciple here with Overwatch Curios, and today I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Symmetra rework that just came out onto the PTR and will be going live soon, probably next week. If you guys haven't seen the gameplay on the Overwatch Moments channel already, go ahead and check that out. I did play a couple games with her and feel like we did pretty well, and I'm really excited about the changes that Blizzard are making to make Symmetra a little bit more viable, especially in a competitive sense. These changes, of course, being that Symmetra can now store up to 6 sentry turrets instead of 3, and they will regenerate every 10 seconds instead of every 12, that instead of placing shields on her allies, she sends out a projected barrier forward with her E, similar to Reinhardt's shield, but it constantly travels forward in a track and it breaks when it hits a wall. Her left click can now lock on at a slightly longer range, and her teleporter now has 50 health and 250 shields instead of simply having 200 health. But the biggest change, of course, is Symmetra's new ultimate, and it's really the reason that we're making this video specifically. So now, instead of just placing a teleporter, Symmetra can now choose to place the teleporter or to place a shield generator. And what happens is, when you or your allies run within a certain range of it, it will give you 75 shields, and they stay on you until you run outside of a larger outer ring. And what we wanted to do with this video is figure out what the best uses are for the shield generator, as well as where some of the best locations are to place it, so that it covers the majority of your team or the point or the payload while being in a fairly safe spot so that the enemies can't find it very easily. For the first map, we're going to head over to Volskaya Industries to take a look at where exactly Symmetra should place her shield generator to cover the best amount of space while keeping it the safest. Now, this is an aerial view of point A on Volskaya Industries. You can see the attacker spawn up near the top, as well as the entrance to point B over on the left. Now, the way that we're going to measure this out is by placing a shield generator on the very back of the point and then running away from the point and seeing how far we can get before we lose our shields. And that's going to show us the very outer radius of where we can place our shield generators so that it will continue to give shields to everyone on your team as long as they're still on the point or somewhere between the point and your generator. And what we're going to find is that the range is actually pretty wild. So if I run over to the edge of the map here, and there's actually nowhere you can run to that's out of range of your shield generator back on that point, which means that a shield generator placed anywhere along here will continue to reapply shields to people who are on the point. So it isn't until you run all the way over to the attacker's spawn that you finally lose your shields. And it really goes to show that this range is pretty monumental, and it means that you could place your shield generator in some very unique and hard to find spots. For Volskaya Point A, I recommend putting the shield generator in the big room immediately across from the spawn. It's typically a room that the defense isn't going to run into very often, and it actually covers the entirety of Point A along with all of the other rooms that lead up to it on both sides. And you can see it here. It actually forces me to run all the way out to almost the edge of the map before I can lose my shields, and simply by running back onto the spawn, I can have them reapplied. So that's a great position that you're pretty unlikely to have countered, and if it is countered, you can really easily place it on either building to the side, or if the enemies are playing pretty far back, you could even play it a little bit farther forward in the rooms. Now, when testing Symmetra for defense, we decided to throw a shield generator in this back left room behind the wall that leads to point A. And what we discovered was not only does this cover the entirety of point A and all of the space leading up to it, but that you can actually essentially run to the opposing spawn or to the very corner of the map on the far end before you lose the shields, and running back onto the point gives you the shields again. So it really does feel like Symmetra could have a lot of her old strength with the 75 shields if she were to run in a composition with some of the squishier heroes. But take a look at this, almost all the way to the spawn, and then we finally lose the shields. Now, we do have to run back a bit to regain them. There is a difference in the radii of when you can gain the shields and when you lose them. For attacking on point B, any of the rooms to the outside of point B will also cover all the way up to the defender spawn. And if you're defending with point B on Symmetra, if you haven't switched off of her by then, there's actually nowhere in this entire room that you could place a shield generator where it wouldn't cover every allied hero in the room as well. So you're actually pretty safe to throw it pretty much anywhere here, as long as it's going to be safe from your enemy flankers. So to sum it up, for the attackers on point A, the safest place to put a shield generator where it'll still cover the majority of point A is right here, and for the defenders, you can place them around here or here and both will be relatively safe. Now we have our methodology for finding the best place for a shield generator. We just know that it has to be in range of the majority of the point for your own team, and it has to be placed far enough back that it's safe from enemy flankers from finding it so that it can stay alive for as long as possible until you capture the point and get up to that next checkpoint when you will get it refunded to you. And now taking this over to Temple of Anubis, we can see that for the attackers, the best place to put your shield projector on point A is going to be directly outside of your spawn all the way up against that wall, because as the crow flies, it's actually very close to the first point, so it will cover your team all the way through here, whether they go left, right, or right down the center. If you're going to be on the defensive, however, you can pretty much put your shield projector anywhere outside of your own point B. That's any of the catacombs or ruins leading up to point A on the left or the right, or any of the rooms behind point A. Those are all going to cover all of point A. However, you do need to have them slightly closer to the point or over on the right side if you want to cover all of the choke and everything leading up to point A so that your team can extend a little bit in their fight. I'm pretty sure you guys are starting to see a pattern here. The range on the shield projector is huge, so it's fairly easy to set it up somewhere safe where it'll still reach the point. Now I'm going to be mostly focused on offensive positions here, and even though Symmetra is likely still better as a defensive character, I'm just going to take a look at the offensive shielding positions because a defensive Symmetra pretty much has unlimited options about where she wants to put her shield projector. Now one of the advantages of having the shield projector over the teleporter is that it does give you a much wider effective range where you can place it safely and still get value from it. So if you're having trouble pushing through a certain choke or getting past much of your enemy's defenses, then the shield projector could potentially give your team the extra beef they need to push through. However, if you are getting to a point where you're essentially pushing up to the point itself where you're going to capture it, then maybe the teleporter is a better option since you can slip off to a room on the side or even behind and set up an offensive location. Whereas the shield projector can pretty much be set up anywhere nearby safely. In some cases, you can even set it up in your own spawn, and even though it's not invincible in your own spawn, it's very difficult to reach, and you can still reach the point. Now, King's Row is fairly forgiving because it's so compact, and since your shield projector does go without line of sight, it can cover a huge area on these types of maps. Now for the first point, you can choose either of the buildings on the left or the right of spawn and it'll cover the entire point A. Then moving into the payload phase, if you can find a good spot in any of the buildings along the road or up on the second stories on any of the walkways or stairs or in the buildings themselves, you can cover the entire payload section very, very easily. Then moving up to the final push, a shield projector set up right outside should cover you all the way up until the very end, but you will lose your shields as you push the payload in, so you may need to move it a bit forward inside. What you can do is set it up in the vents up top, and it will cover you in the entirety of that area all the way up to the defender spawn. Now, Hanamura is one of the most straightforward maps for Symmetra on offense, but I also think it's probably her strongest. Not only can she use her E to break through the choke right there in the first arch, but she also has several choices of where to locate her barrier projector. The issue is, on most other maps, if there's a single strongest location to place it, then the enemies will have a really easy time finding it. But in this case, you can place it in any of the buildings or anywhere along the wall here, and it'll extend across the entire point A, giving your entire team 75 shields. So there's really nowhere wrong you can place the barrier projector as long as the enemy flankers don't get through and find it. I think this map is a pretty good example of where Symmetra could shine on offense, because there's really only one large open area, which is right through the middle of the courtyard, that Symmetra can use her projected shield to get through, and the rest is all setting up little turret nests and small close quarters combat where I think Symmetra could be very, very strong in. Now when you're starting off on Hanamura, point A is rather flexible about where you can place your projected shield, but it's most likely going to be safest upstairs or in a building. Once you move over to point B, then it really opens up because pretty much anywhere between point A and B is going to be large enough to cover the entire inside of the dojo that you're going to be fighting in. So try and place it in any of these buildings. When attacking on Numbani, you have quite a bit of flexibility on where to put your shield projector. The building behind the bus or any of the buildings over on the left, either upstairs or downstairs, should give you enough coverage to cover the entirety of point A. However, once you capture point A, Symmetra becomes a little bit less effective, and it's hard to tell you exactly where to put her shield projector. Since the payload will constantly be moving, you can't really know exactly where will be the most efficient or effective position, but you should probably be a little bold with it, since if you do leave it too far behind, then you don't get any use from it until you get the next checkpoint, since you cannot place a new ultimate until the old one dies or until you get a new checkpoint. Now Hollywood has some awesome locations for Symmetra to set up her shield projector when she's attacking, and if you guys did see the gameplay on Overwatch Moments, then you guys would see that we actually had a very successful offensive Symmetra game on Hollywood. Now the two most obvious places that you're going to put your shield projector are the buildings on the far corners. However, you can place your shield projector as far back as the hotel, and it will extend a little bit onto the point, so you could do that if your team is having a really hard time pushing in through the choke. However, I believe that this far back area right next to the health pack upstairs will be the safest place to put the shield projector, and it does cover well back onto the point here on Hollywood. Now, Eichenwald is the last of the 2-point capture or hybrid maps that we're going to talk about for Symmetra's shield projector placement, and it's got some pretty obvious ones. Now, the choke here is going to serve as a very difficult tool for the offense to press through. However, it also is a pretty difficult place for the defense to press out from. So these buildings on either side of the choke are going to be some prime locations for your shield projector, and it's going to cover all the way back onto the point. So if you set up your shield projector on either of those health pack rooms, not only is it going to be difficult for the defense to reach it, but it's going to allow you to extend really far through this choke. And again, since you're Symmetra, you can now use your projected barrier out in front of you to push through this choke. And as long as a Mei isn't there to wall you in, it should be pretty smooth going for your team on offense. Now, as we mentioned before, Symmetra really struggles when it comes to payload, since the area that you're fighting around is moving constantly, and Symmetra would much prefer to take control of a specific area using her ultimate and setting up her sentries. Now, we could get into each control point map specifically to talk about where some of the best positions are. However, I feel like at this point we have a really good understanding of the general range of her ultimate, as well as where some of the safest places are to put it when you're first starting out on offense. And then as you move forward, continuing to take points, you can continue to crawl forward your shield projector. When it comes to control points, you can really set up your shield projector anywhere on the outskirts, and it's going to have the range to extend across the entire point, but fiddle around with it yourself and make sure that your entire team is staying shielded for the majority of the fight, because that's the reason why you chose that ultimate. Hopefully this video has provided you some insight into how to use Symmetra's ultimate and how to take full advantage of her rework, and I hope that you guys get to try this out on your own on the PTR as well as when it goes live next week. Anyways, I've been Disciple, this is Overwatch Curios, and we'll see you guys next time. Shopping.